we're going to choose something a little bit different, because what we're going to do is briefly go through each faction's sort of win rate and just touch upon what their meta is. But also, we're actually going to, this was a suggestion from last week, where someone said, Mordian, to spice things up and to change it up a little bit, why don't you go through each faction as you cover them, talk about how Guard plays into that faction and how you beat that faction with Guard, or what you know, so sort of a catch-all, know thy foe, which I thought was a really, really, really good idea. So we're going to be doing that. How do Guard play into Space Marines? There are a few units that are surprisingly tricky for Guard to deal with in the Space Marines. And one that's very common, but one that always causes me a lot of problems, is the Adeptus Dreadnought. I know, right? Sounds crazy, sounds newbie, but the Adeptus Dreadnought has, it's got a 2-up save, and it reduces damage by 1. And so I have found that Adeptus Dreadnoughts can be very, very tanky. So when you, for example, if you're like trying to bring a Adeptus Dreadnought down with like a battle cannon, Leaving Russ, or an auto cannon, Leaving Russ, it will typically just absorb all that damage and not really give a shit. So Adeptus Dreadnoughts are with the plasma cannons, do not underestimate them. They are they're very common. Everyone has them, and you find them a lot in casual and competitive games. But that's quite a specific example. Generally speaking, how I find Guard beats Marines, the Marines are going to have better quality than you. And so what you'll find is the Marine player is going to try and achieve localized superiority. And the first way you try and beat Space Marines is the way you try and beat any elite army, is you try and force them to give up their combat width. So you spread out your deployment just a little bit, and if they spread out as well, then you're fine, because their number one thing is they've got better combat width. The thing to bear in mind with Marines is that even a basic spaceman like an intercessor is still much better in close combat than you. And so what you tend to find is Marines are kind of, they shoot you up and then they finish you off in combat. Now, what I have found Space Marines struggle with is they struggle with Mechanized Guard. Now, Mechanized Guard is by far our most powerful playstyle right now, but the reason why Marines struggle with it is they often rely upon their units acting in multiple phases. So they'll shoot you, and then that one unit will shoot you and then charge you. And so the problem is, if they shoot, let's say you've got a Chimera. If they shoot a Chimera, don't quite kill it, but then finish it off in combat, then what will happen is the guys just get out, and you still get to hold the objective, essentially. So that's one thing that they can struggle with, because then essentially they haven't killed one unit in shooting and killed one unit in combat. Also, now that Ironstorm Spearhead is a shadow of its former self, Guard fairly reliably outshoot Marines. But one thing you also want to be aware of is Oath of Moment. So what the Marine player is going to try and do is Oath of Moment one key unit a turn, and then basically delete that unit. What you will notice is anything that the Space Marine player has not Oath of Momented will be fine. It will be fine. So Marines are very, very reliant on that. So if you and it's, don't get me wrong, it's a very good ability, but they can only place that in one place at a time. So rather than letting the Marines, beat you in detail, basically attack them along a wide frontage, or present them with multiple units which they want to try and deal with, and then what will happen is they will deal with the one that they Oath of Moment, and then the others will basically come out, do a little bit of damage to you, but you'll get hit hard, but you'll hit back even harder. So Marines, they're not a major problem for the Guard, because so many of our weapons are damage 3, and so many Marine units have got like 3 wounds. So so generally speaking, the firefight is going to go in your direction. go like Poet. Doesn't Gilliman give second at the moment target? He does. He does. Not everyone runs Gilliman, but yes, if Gilliman does give you double oath, so that is something to be careful of if you're facing off against Ultramarines. But honestly, right now Marines aren't a huge threat to Guard. Don't underestimate them though. And the best thing to do is essentially try and force them to deal with your metal boxes, with your chimeras, and then hit them when they come out to play. Because at the end of the day, if any Marine, a lot of Marine units have just a 3-up save. Like whether it's their infantry or whether it's their vehicles, a lot of their stuff only has a 3-up save. So and you really notice that when your tanks like Leman Russes and Rogal Dawns have got a 2-up and their tanks have only got a 3-up. Marines really don't like dealing with Rogal Dawns. Really, really don't like dealing with Rogal Dawns, man, because they're tougher than a lot of their like anti-tank, especially ranged anti-tank, will be like las cannons. So like, you know, Predators with autocannons and las cannons on the side. And those things just fucking bounce off Dawns because especially if it's a Dawn that's not been oath momented. Sure. So those are a few ways that I recommend that you that's few know thy foe tricks for dealing with Space Marines. Next we have Orks. Now when it comes to dealing with Orks come in many different flavors. Many different flavors. But by and large, they are a fairly easy faction for Guard to counter. Orks are going to try and get into melee. Even in Dread Mob, their shooting isn't that much to write home about. Like, if Orks want to get into a shooting war with Guard, even their best shooting army can't keep up with us. Yes, they have a stratagem. They have like a Stomper, 4 rolls to hit, 4 rolls to wound. Look, I've been on the receiving end of it. It's, you know, like, whatever. It's fine, okay? Guard don't struggle with Orks because the general Orc mentality is to bum rush you. And honestly, Guard just has the firepower to clear them too quickly. That's the problem. Orks, you know, as with any faction, don't be too overconfident. You can't just walk. You can't walk up to them and expect to win. But if you play a tight game and you stick to the basics of, you know, sacrificial units line 1, sacrificial units line 2, all firepower line 3, you can't really lose. The classic 3-line tactic, one that I recommend every new Guard player learns, addition in, addition out. The classic 3 lines beats Orks 9 times out of 10. It's just that simple. Screening, screening, screening. That's it. If you screen well against the majority of Orc armies, you won't have a problem. That's the number one thing. A couple of tricks they have up their sleeve. Be aware of the jump. There might be don't leave your backfield open. Don't underestimate them in combat. What they hit, they are going to kill. So whatever you put up front, expect it to die. So make sure it is sacrificial. And be aware that they're probably going to be ahead turns 1 and turn 2. But if you can clear them, if you can clear the majority of them, turn 1, turn 2, then you'll pull the game back turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. Often with Orks, they're going to, you know, it's going to be you got to play for the late game. Bear that in mind if you're at a tournament because you're going to be on the clock. And if you don't get your turn 3, turn 4, and turn 5, you might end up losing the game because the game ended before you really started to get your points back. Yeah, that's sort of the, I guess that's the main ones. Godlike Poet, one thing to be aware of, I've played against, if they're running a load of Bubble Chuckers in Dread Mob, be aware, they are really nasty. I haven't played against Bubble Chuckers yet, so that's I will trust your greater judgment, your greater experience there, man. Sure. Yeah. One thing to mention is Orks will rarely use their War turn 1. Rarely. Because but they will pretty much always use it turn 2. Pretty much always. So even if you are like, oh, like he's gone all in this turn, I should be fine to clear him. Be aware that a 5-up ward is still 5-up invulnerable could spike. So don't be afraid to overcommit. to killing them. Also, don't be afraid if there's like one orc boy left over. Don't be afraid to charge him if you've got like 10 guardsmen. Like, because their armor saves a diddly dick. Like 10 guardsmen typically, you know, will have like 10 attacks. Maybe as many as 12 attacks if you've got a sergeant chainsaw in there. You hit with 6, you'll wound with 2, and the orc should fail the save and die. So it's not, don't be charging big mobs, don't be charging full strength things. I'm talking like if there is a lone orc boy or 2 left over on an objective, don't forget you can charge that. Okay, like a lot of people don't. A lot of people just think guard won't charge at all. You can use that to catch people out. And then we're gonna do one more here, and then we're gonna catch up on bits. So we've got Black Templars here. The number one thing to be aware of is the Black Tide, the Crusade Tide. So it is entirely possible for Black Templar players to run 100 Space Marines, 100 Crusaders, and they're going to have enough points left over to have those Marines well supported, and also to have a couple of cheeky small squads that can do objectives. So don't think just because they've got 100 Marines, they haven't got points left over to play the game properly. They're playing the game properly. Now, the Black Tide is basically a stat check. It's basically a stat check. Can you kill 100 Marines? Yes, no. If you can't kill 100 Marines, it's going to flatten you. If you can kill 100 Marines, you'll be fine. When dealing with Black Templars, whilst their community might take a bit of a offense to this, many of the lessons that many of the things I said about Orks apply to Black Templars. They're going to try and bum rush you. If they're going Black Tide, they're going to try and bum rush you. They're going to try and overwhelm you. They're going to try and keep you busy. Black Tide is if Black Tide, if it can keep you busy for 3 turns, it's a good chance it wins the game. It doesn't have to keep you busy the whole game. It just has to keep you busy for the majority of it, and then you won't have enough time to claw it back. Unfortunately, Guard has a metric fuck ton of blast weapons and a metric fuck ton of damage 2 and damage 3 weapons, which will eat it for breakfast. But against Guard, they'll probably take lethal hits because they can pick whether they get lethal hits, sustained hits, or anti-psyker. They're never going to take the anti-psyker, but they'll always take the lethal hits against you, so they can grind through your tanks. They also have Scout. They also reroll advance and charge rolls, and I believe they have one unit which can advance and charge. One good way of dealing with Black Templars is Bullgrin, because the Bullgrin are going to basically, the Black Templars are going to fly in and just hit the brick wall like that. But yeah, it's funny when dealing with Black Templars, it's like take the lessons of dealing with Space Marines and Orcs and combine them essentially. Tau can be very difficult for Guard. Very. They are one of the factions that edition in, edition out, we struggle into the most. And it's because realistically, they're also a shooting army. So a lot of the time, Guard will beat armies because our shooting is just so much better than theirs. So our Marines, even if if we said before, like if Orcs or Marines want to get into direct firefight with Guard, be my fucking guest kind of thing. With Tau, it's a little different. They can match us. They can definitely match us for firepower. In many ways, they can exceed us for firepower. They also outmaneuver us typically. So what that means is they get the first hit in, which can be very hard. And then the worst bit is that the things that Tau are bad at, like combat and whatnot, which is meant to balance them out, Guard doesn't really do. Guard does combat much better than Tau, but rarely do Guard players like spec into being like really good at combat. And even if we do take some close combat, rarely does us being slightly better at combat really make up for being outmaneuvered and outshot. So Tau are a tough one, and definitely not one you want to underestimate as a Guard player. One thing that Tau players I have noticed have struggled with in this edition is typically their firepower is very front-loaded. A good example is nearly all of the Tau vehicles come with 2 Seeker missiles. These are basically the same as our Hunter Killer missiles, but they get 2 per vehicle, whereas we only get 1. Now, the Tau are probably going to spunk all of those Seeker missiles, especially if they're going like Monka. They're going to spunk all those Seeker missiles in the first couple of turns. And once all of those Seeker missiles have gone, their firepower will drop off. So it's tough. Okay, so it's an example of like, you know, how Tau kind of do the same thing as Guard, but in many ways they can do it a little bit better. How do you beat Tau? I have beaten Tau a handful of times. Well, I've beaten Tau a few times over the editions. It's definitely not a faction I have a great track record into, but a few tricks that I have noticed is that Tau do not have good indirect fire. So if you can hammer the Tau with indirect fire, that could be a great way of countering them. The other thing that Tau can struggle with, not always, but can struggle with, is horde armies. The most success I've ever had to Tau was when pure infantry was good. I tend to find Tau can deal with Mech Guard better than a lot of factions. Tau, Leman Russes feel tough until they go into Tau. Interestingly, I have found Scions can be very effective into Tau armies because Scions are quite elite and give us back an edge of mobility. Quite good. And I've also found that Rogal Dawns can be quite good because a Leman Russ will get popped. But a Rogal Dawn with a 4+ invulnerable save, it can shrug things off a little bit better. And you know, if the Tau, one of the things that Tau really rely upon these days is they rely upon moving into an area and utterly destroying it, and then moving into the next area and utterly destroying it. If they move into an area and they don't utterly destroy it, then what they've done is they've kind of exposed themselves. And now that they don't have like drones as ablative wounds, and the best case scenario is they've got a 4+ invulnerable save, you can have it where they move into an area, don't clear it, they've exposed themselves, and then you hit them back hard. Fighting against Tau is a very, very difficult experience for a lot of players. Try not to let them bamboozle you. Try not to let them voodoo you, and try where all possible. Try and take the punch. That's a very, very, very risky thing to do because like they can deliver a lot of firepower. Indirect fire and deep striking can get the job done against Tau. Gigablobs of Scions and Basilisk. It requires a little bit. So it's not that it requires list tailoring, but you know, if you're looking at if you're bringing a Guard army, you should always be having your indirect fire, right? Yeah. Akoratain makes a great point. Remember, they can get better angles than you think they can at a glance. Yep. They're very, very maneuverable. Tower like Guard, but much, much faster. Yeah. So that's my general advice with Tau is they're very tricky for Guard to deal with. They play very similarly to Guard, but they in many ways exceed our capabilities, especially now that they've got a lot cheaper. We can't even necessarily rely upon huge numbers, but being hyper durable or being very good at being hyper durable counters them, because like I said, they can give a punch, but they're not as good at taking a punch anymore. That's the advantage Guard has over them. Guard don't do quite as much damage as we want, in comparison to Tau, but we can take a punch and give it back, whereas Tau rely upon there being no clap back, essentially. So and one thing I've seen Tau struggle with in the past is them go in, and then they bounce, and then because they've had to get close to the enemy when they go in for like to do a lot of their firepower, like breach and stuff, then the enemy pounces back and kills them. So yeah, if you can take the punch, you'll find that you'll find your clapback will be quite good. The other way is to get the drop on them first, because once again they can't take the punch all that well. So, a lot of their vehicles are like a 3-up save, 3-up save, no invulnerable save. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to kick them down like a 5-up with like a lad's cannon. Like, the best thing they're going to have is like a 4-up invulnerable save. That's the most durable thing. Right? So, bear that in mind. Either get the drop on them first with Scions, or be prepared to take a punch and then hit back. Clap back hard. One example of this is when Simon and I last played, he led with his light armor because that's what you normally do with Guard, right? You lead with the chimeras and the big tanks at the back. That's your normal screening. When playing Tau, you almost need to switch it up. When playing Tau, it's like if you lead with the light stuff, they just clean all the light stuff up because it can't take the punch. So what you want to do is lead with the Rogal Dawns, lose a Dawn and a half, and then hit back with everything else. Because they're not gonna tie up in combat. So yeah, lead with the tough stuff when fighting Tau. My general advice, man. And you need some tough shit against them. This is where Dawns beat Russes every day of the week. Because Russes can't take it. Russes just can't. Not against Tau, but Dawns can. Next, we've got Chaos Knights. They're gatekeepers. Same thing. Imperial Knights right now are better than Chaos Knights. The win rate has been consistently better over multiple weeks. The player numbers have been often much better than this over several weeks. And the number of players going 4-1 are better. Knights and Chaos Knights I lump together with my analysis because basically they're a stat check. Did you bring enough anti-tank? If yes, then Knights completely crumble. If no, then Knights are just going to walk all over you. How do Guard beat Knights? Honestly, Guard doesn't have any problem killing Knights, man. Our tanks are half the points of their Knights and better. If an Armiger gets into a battle with the Leman Russ wins. If a medium knight gets into battle with a Rogal Dawn, the Rogal Dawn wins. The only knight that you never see anyone take it, and the only knight that I've ever had a problem with is the Castellan with the Melter Lance. Other than that, their battle cannons, they haven't got the AP to crack open our vehicles. You will flatten them. You will absolutely flatten them. Five Leman Russes, or 4 or 5 big tanks will just flatten them. And all your infantry will do chip damage to them. And yeah. The one thing that might catch you out is they're surprisingly OC dense. But truthfully, Knights versus Guard is a terrible matchup for Knights. And generally a very good matchup for the Guard. Imperial Agents. Imperial Agents, I don't think you're going to see huge numbers of players of them. But I don't think they'll be they're not going to be a huge faction. The Adeptus Custodes! Yes! Guard into Custodes. As Al Coffin said, I have found it to be a very feels bad game for one player or the other. So basically, it comes down to the simple fact of how many 4-ups can the Custodes roll. The Guard is loaded up with an ungodly amount of damage 3 weapons. Damage 3 battle cannons, damage 3 auto cannons, damage 3 Rogal Dawn weapons for days. They've got a lot of damage 3. And so Imperial Guard into your sort of traditional sort of shield host infantry heavy army is going to be how many 4-ups the Custodes can roll. Because everyone that they pass, in theory, splats a guy. Now the reality is it's not quite that simple. Firstly, you've got Wardens, who will once again pop like a 4+ feel no pain or something insane. And secondly, deep strike. One thing that people often forget about Custodes is they can deep strike. Like not reserve, they fucking deep strike. And so what you find Custodes will often do is, what the Guard player wants to do is basically blast the Custodes off the board, and what the Custodes player wants to do is try and close the distance as quickly as possible. Now, the way that Custodes beat Guard is they overwhelm us with multiple threats. So even though they're hyper elite, Guard can really only kill 1 unit of Custodians a turn. Even like bringing all of our firepower to bear, we kill 1 unit of Custodians a turn. So if the Custodians player deep strikes down and yeets into us three blobs, that is really going to put the Guard player on the back foot. So interestingly, I find that Guard typically wants to go first against the Custodians. Because even though turn 1, you're not going to see anything, because it's going to be in deep strike or it's going to be behind ruins. If you go first, it means you have an extra turn to screen them out. And you don't need a lot of stuff. You don't need a lot of units to screen out a large area of the board. It's a big fucking 9-inch bubble. So having 2 or 3 units that are utterly sacrificial, that you can just bum rush across the board in the first couple of turns, and expecting them to completely die is very effective. Because then what happens is the Custodians player who brings stuff in deep strike turn 2, or rapid ingresses, don't forget rapid ingress, is going to start. They can only rapid ingress 1 unit. So they're going to rapid ingress 1 for sure, but then the other ones they're going to be starting further back than they want. So basically you want to have 2 units that really push them back, and then you want to. The one problem you're going to have is you don't want the Custodians to basically deep strike into the middle of the board and then push you back and put you into golden jail. So even though it feels like a bit of a keep away, honestly, you kind of want to unrush them back a little bit. It sounds like you want to do keep away, but if you try and keep too far back, yeah, it's not great. Interestingly, Custodians fucking hate Rogal Dawns. I've had several times where enemy units have charged, when Custodians charged into Rogal Dawns, and I've just been like, yeah, that's cool. I'll just tank it, because even with like lethals and stuff, got so many wounds, it can be a real problem for them to get through, and you can have a 4 vulnerable, and you can blank on the damage as well. But yeah, they'll go through a Russ, they'll go through a Chimera, no problem. But you just have to. It's a real catch-22 when facing Custodians, because on the one hand, you don't want them. You want to try and have as many turns as possible to shoot them. On the other hand, you don't want to just sit in your deployment zone and get pinned back. Whenever I have played timidly against Custodians, I have lost. Whenever I have played sensibly yet aggressively against them, I have won. Because as much as the Custodians want to overwhelm you, they want to overwhelm you with multiple threats in one place. They want to send this flank in, then this flank in. If you can force them to try and fight across the whole board, then the force concentration thing versus combat width thing will come back into it. Because even though Guard can only kill 1 unit at a time in sort of a local area, if they Custodians at the same time also can only hit you back 1 unit at a time if they're spread out. So it's a brutal game. Screening is very important, but don't be bamboozled, don't be voodooed, don't be afraid you want to get stuck in, but you want your screens to be taking the damage whilst you're pushing them with your damage dealers, essentially. Otherwise, all that'll happen is and I've had this happen to me, rapid ingress 1 unit of Wardens, pop a 4+ invulnerable save, 4+ feel no pain, fly in, turn 2, 1 with rapid ingress, turn 3, same thing, and then turn 4, same thing, and basically just 3 units of Wardens went down 1 flank, and I was never not facing the 4 invulnerable save, basically, 4 ward save, basically. 4 feel no pain, basically. So yeah, Custodians are tricky for Guard, but if basically you can have them munching on shit the entire time, you can blast them away. Next we have got Chaos Demons. Demon save. There's not much that's changed with Demons over the meta. In the current meta, much has changed over the course of 10th edition. They've gone from Monster Mash to now sort of basically spamming Blood Crushers. That Blood Crushers are broken. That's the main takeaway. Monocorn, going all Blood Crushers, very, very, very spicy. Now, how Guard deal with demons generally is what demons like to do in one form or another is basically basically bum rush you with 3 or 4 very good units, whilst the little stuff sits around doing actions and objectives and scoring points. So what you want to do with demons is basically kill all the little stuff because it forces them to use their big stuff to get points. And if they don't use the big stuff to get points, whether it's Blood Crushers or Greater Demons or whatever, if they don't use the big stuff to get points, then even if they do a lot of damage to you, it doesn't really matter because they're not scoring any points. So the last time I played against Demons, I actually probably lost. I lost as much as my opponent did. And yet I got 100 points, they got 70. Because I spent the first 2 turns picking up every small little objective holding bastard that I could. And then the demon army was rolling down one flank and they ended up taking my home objective and everything. Didn't matter. By the time that happened, they weren't on any of the other No Man's Land objectives because that's all I cared about, all I focused about. So demons, that's similar to facing orcs. They're a pressure army typically. Their shooting isn't much to write home about. They're more about combat. But yeah, more so than anything, demons like to have little units doing little things and big units basically distracting you. It's like an entire distraction kind of effect. So don't be distracted. Indirect fire, scions, just pushing forward. Basically, kill the little shit and the big shit will either not score any points or try and score points, at which point you just shoot it because it's like a big demon. It's like a bloodthirster sat there on an objective with an axe going, fucking hell! And then it just dies. Yeah. Medium, right. Do you get points for a game for killing units? No. There are some secondary objectives that are like kill 3 units, get like 5 points. Bear in mind, there's a total of 100 victory points, so it's not much. But by and large, you get points for doing like holding objectives and completing actions like that. Swords of 37. Only shooting of concern is the Lord of Change, who has many strength 12 with sustained hits D3. Yeah, but it's like, a las cannon, right? He's like, does some good las cannon shots. That's okay. But yeah, it's like one shooting unit. So yeah, you'd be aware of the Lord of Change, but by and large, it's not the shooting that's going to be getting you. It's going to be the combat. So yeah, kill everything around the big stuff and then mop up the big stuff. Now, Guard dealing with Tyranids. I haven't really had any issues with dealing with Tyranids this edition. Our little bastards are better than their little bastards. So Guardsmen beat Gaunts. Whether it's Hormagaunts or Termagants. Guardsmen just... Maybe the Hormagaunts will fly in and batter a 20-man blob. Yeah, it's basically... That's the only real one. Yeah, our little guys are basically better than their little guys. Our big guys are basically better than their big guys. The one thing to be aware of with Tyranids is Vanguard Onslaught will try and bamboozle you. The way you beat Vanguard Onslaught is you go, fuck you, I'm not listening to all your fancy tricks. You just get within 6 inches of them and then shoot them to death because it turns out they actually do no damage. And Invasion Fleet, you want to be kind of careful of the Tyrannofexes. Their guns are now very... If you see a Tyrannofex, see a Rogal Dawn, you won't go too far wrong with what you're trying to deal with. Tyranids, don't underestimate them. They're still a good faction. They've still got speed. They're still very speedy. 20 Hormagaunts will reach your turn 1. But Tyranids struggle with armor. And so if you turn up with Mech Guard, they're going to have a bad time. As a mechanized Guard player, I have taken my Mech Guard army and I have gone super hyper over aggressive, rammed it down the Tyranid's opponent's throat, and he's come in, basically scratched a bunch of paint, and then I've just I've taken some casualties, and then I've just turned around like blown off the table. Tyranids are going to come in, they're going to hit hard, you're going to hit back even harder. That's the main thing. Hellhounds are really good against Tyranids, especially ones that try and tie you up. They do have damage dealers, and don't forget there will be strength 4 in they'll have +1 strength in a lot of cases in combat now. But even with that, generally speaking, overwhelming armor will Yeah. Overwhelming armor will beat them. Richard Baker, I think they have the best infiltrators. They do have the best infiltrators, Tyranids. Problem is that I don't care. And I'm not saying that as in like I don't care what you're saying. I know that's a good point that you've raised. As a guard player, I don't care. I once had a Vanguard player take 10 minutes explaining all of the rules in his army in detail, which is exactly what you should do before the game. And I sat there and I just couldn't understand any of it. It was like game 4, I just didn't get it. I was like, and so basically I just went, okay, I don't really know what any of your stuff does. So I'm just going to move. I'm just going to be aggressive. And I looked at your army. I was like, I don't see any anti-tank. I don't see any anti-tank really in this army. So I'm going to run forward. And my opponent was like, oh, but he was like, oh. And then he was like, I wasn't expecting you to do that. And because I just basically moved forward and went, okay, I'm going to shoot you. And he was like, okay, I'm going to be blown up then within 6 inches. And I was like, okay. He's like, what do you mean, okay? I went, well, my Rogal Dawn's easily within 6 inches of you there. And he was like, oh, measured it. Oh, he tried to bamboozle me, and by me basically having an ogre brain and me being too fucking stupid to really understand it, I'd accidentally countered him. Because I just went, well, I can't see any anti-tank. You say that you do a lot of battle shock stuff with these neurolictors. You say that I can't shoot you from range, so I figured if I can't shoot you from far away, I'll fucking shoot you point blank in the fucking face. And it turned out that was the right thing to do. Yeah. So Tyranids have very good. That's what I mean by like Vanguard Onslaught. It's gonna be all over the board from turn 1, and basically just drive up to it. It'll bounce off and do no damage to you, and then just kill them. Kian, hit the big brain with the rock. Exactly. I cannot be bamboozled if I cannot be voodooed and bamboozled if I don't have the mental capacity to be voodooed and bamboozled. But on a more serious note, honestly, the best way to deal with all of these tricksy, complicated armies is just pure violence. They're trying to outmaneuver you. They're trying to bamboozle you. They're trying to keep you guessing. And if you just shut out what they're trying to do and just focus on what you want to do, then you'll find that you won't even realize half their fucking tricks. The Leagues of Votann. Now, Votann versus Guards is a difficult matchup for the Votann. It doesn't look like it on paper, but it is. There's a few things Guard do that really piss Votann off. The first one is, we have indirect fire, they don't. They have like none. It's just a big advantage. Every single game that I've played against Votann in 10th edition, I have beaten them. I think there's one, I may have got a draw against them once, okay? Every single game where I've played against Votann, the thing that has been a huge advantage to me as a guard player is the fact that I had indirect fire and they didn't. And I'm not talking like I was spamming 10 artillery pieces. I'm talking I had double Manticore, or I had double Basilisk, or I had 3 Death Strikes. But the point is, just 2 bits of indirect fire, or 2 to 3 bits of indirect fire really fucks with them. The second thing that really fucks them off is the fact Basilisks are great into them because they're a very slow army. So 2 or 3 Basilisks and you're just like... the other thing with Votann so Guard can have indirect fire, Guard can slow them down, Guard are faster than them, and Guard aren't faster than a lot of armies, so it's worth mentioning. And the last thing is Guard outrange them. People say that like a 24-inch range is good enough in 10th edition, because everyone's got 24-inch range guns. But I've said this for a long time. I've said this, remember back in 9th edition when everyone was like spamming Lemurus Demolishers, and I was like, I'll always take a lot of Lemurus Demolishers, but I'll always take a few non-Lemurus Demolishers. Like I often went for a good 1-to-1 ratio. And the reason is that a 24-inch range is fine, is enough until suddenly it's not, and then it costs you the game. So Votann, unfortunately, don't have the luxury of having something that isn't 24-inch range. Like they've got heavy bolters, but apart from that, all their big hitters are 24-inch range. And yeah, if it gets into anyone's range, it's going to hurt like fuck. But you can genuinely keep away from them. And what's funny is you can use your superior range to just lock areas of the board down. I've done this in 3 or 4 competitive games. Where basically, I've been like, there's an objective there. I can see it with these tanks. I have a 36 to 48 inch range. So I know that you've got Hecaton or you've got 2 Sagittars behind that building. I know you've got that. But I also know that you don't have the movement to come out onto that objective and be able to shoot me. Or come out into that firing lane and be able to shoot me. I know you don't have that. So I'm just going to stay here. And I don't need to use these 2 tanks. Because these 2 tanks are doing a great job at keeping you back off that objective, which is scoring points. I'm scoring my points elsewhere. So the biggest advantage Guard has over them is range. Use that advantage. Take advantage of pre-measuring. And you'll have no issue with dealing with Votann. Yeah, and even if they deep strike stuff in, once it's down, it's not going anywhere else. So often what I've done, if Votann come in and like dominate one objective, I'm like, fuck it, have that one objective. I'll go for these 3. You have that one in your home, and I'll go for these 3, and you're going to be fucking coming nowhere fast, sunshine. So screening them out is a great way of fucking with them as well. Because once they deep strike down, you know, they're forced to deep strike down, they're going to be like, oh, I'm basically deep striking in my deployment zone, or I'm deep striking on this one flank, and now I'm stuck here. So yeah. Outmaneuver them, outrange them, get the first hit in, and you'll be fine. How do Guard beat Chaos Space Marines? Okay, so a lot of the stuff you don't need to worry about. The one you want to focus on worrying about is Renegade Raiders. Renegade Raiders is very fast. The entire army has advance and shoot. It can't advance do actions, but a little bit like Tau, you know how we said with Tau, they're going to get angles. They're going to surprise you by getting angles you didn't think they were going to get. Renegade Raiders is the same. I've been caught off guard by Renegade Raiders like coming in and just getting me. Where I was like, fucking, I should be hidden there. Nope, just flying in. So they're faster than you expect. The other thing to mention is that their damage output is really higher than it looks on paper. When you look at their data sheets, you're gonna be like, oh, it's a predator with 2 las cannons and an autocannon. I've faced that loads of times with Marines, and I never really worried about it. And then they dart packed, and then they go for sustained hits, and then somehow they've hit you with like 4 lance cannon shots from like one thing. So they're faster than you expect, and they are fucking more lethal than you expect. One thing to be aware with Renegade Raiders as well is Chaos Vindicators in cover with Armor of Contempt or popping smoke and Armor of Contempt are unkillable. If you target a Vindicator and it pops Armor of Contempt and smoke, or it's just in cover, switch target. Because all you'll do is waste your time trying to get through a 3-up save or a 4-up save. It's got a base 2-up, then it's got cover, then it's got Armor of Contempt. You hit it with a Demolisher Cannon, you hit it with a Plasma Cannon, you hit it with a Lance Cannon, it's on a 3-up save. You hit it with a Vanquisher Cannon, it's on a 4-up save. And with a CP reroll, it'll probably pass it. Okay? So the moment that they do that, just switch to something, anything else. Because all you will do is waste your shots into that tough bastard. Now, when I have beaten Renegade Raiders with Guard, handily beaten it, it's when they've tried to get into a shooting match. It's when I've faced a lot of Predators and a lot of Vindicators and stuff, because Guard still really outshoots them. When I've faced Renegade Raiders and it has been very, very hairy, has been when they use their transports and their advance to move very fast, and then they have an advance and charge stratagem. So one thing that I've seen them do is basically take a bunch of take 3 rhinos and put multiple 5-man squads in there, because the rhinos got like a 12-man capacity, so have like multiple sort of 5-man squads in there with like characters attached, and they'll just like throw them out, almost like fire and forget missiles, and they'll just throw them out, And each one is going to come in and hit you like a freight train. Chaos Lords, Leading Chosen, really, really powerful. So Firefight Renegade Raiders you can deal with. For one shot mental missiles coming at you is gonna be tough. It trades well. The way you can what I found quite effective against it was Mech Guard. But also I actually found a Hybrid Guard wasn't too bad, because they sort of slam in, they kill all Sentinels. You know, they can sort of struggle with like armored Sentinels and Bulgrim and stuff like that, like big blocks of Bulgrim. But yeah, basically they're going to come flying in and they're going to be assaulting you. So shooty Renegade Raiders, Guard can handle. Assaulty Renegade Raiders, that's the one that's going to catch you off guard, and that's the one that'll beat you. If Renegade Raiders going to beat you, it's going to be yeeting fast moving one-shot assault units at you. So screening. Next we have got the Eldar. Eldar really struggling to guard, because the number one weakness of Eldar now is attrition. They just don't have enough units to beat guard. I mean, the last time Eldar beat me was about a year. Well, not a year ago. Yeah, but no, it was a year ago. It was coming up to a year ago. And they had a lot of Wraith Guard, because that was like super durable. That was also, I think, when you could use Phantasm on Wraith Guard, and I don't think you can use Phantasm on Wraith Guard anymore. So it probably won't be as bad. The last few times I've played Eldar, I've basically taken my entire... It's kind of like when you face Trixie armies. I've kind of taken my entire army, thrown it into their face. They have killed about 30 to 40% of my army in one go, fully exposed their army, and then I've turned around and just battered them, because the guard can take the punch and Eldar can't. So when playing Eldar, aim to leverage the fact that you will have overwhelming numbers, and aim to have the fact that even if they hit you hard, even if they hit you hard and you just kill a few units, that equation will come out in favor to you. When fighting Eldar, if there's a unit you can see, kill it. Just carve it away. Carve it, even if it's low value. Oh, they've got 5 rangers. The only way you can get those 5 rangers is by pushing out with like a Hellhound. You know, like a valuable tank, pushing out with like maybe even like a Leaving Rust. Do it. Carve it away. Carve it away. Carve it away. Always with Eldar, the way you beat Eldar, ABC, always be carving. Every asset you take away from them is another way you're gonna cripple them, basically. Now, okay, I use an extreme example. You probably won't want to give trade Leaving Rust for like 5 rangers. Okay? Probably not. But if there's an opportunity if there's ever an opportunity for you to take a unit off them, and you can do so, even if you can do so in a reasonably decent trade, even if it's like I said, a Hellhound or like a Chimera and an infantry squad, it's worth taking that. Always worth taking. So yeah, that's the way you beat Eldar. Basically, you just go if you can go 1 for 1 on the unit trade, you'll win. It's that simple. Adeptus Mechanicus. It might sound a little harsh, but I really wouldn't worry about facing AdMech. I would love to give you some tactical insights in how to beat them. I would love to explain, share some experiences that I've had playing against them. But honestly, you just won't come across them. They're a very, very rare faction now. AdMech is completely dried up in my area. And I haven't played them in 10th edition. I have seen them twice. Based off what I have heard with AdMech, they are essentially like wannabe guard. Scutari blobs sitting on objectives whilst their shooter units try and kill you. If they're gonna play like guard, I think realistically trying to outguard the guard might be a little bit of a bone for them, but yeah. Death Guard. Death Guard can be one of the hardest factions for Imperial Guard to face because of their contagions. Whenever I have run my Death Guard, I have completely run over any Imperial Guard. And I don't mean that in a way to lambast anyone who's done battle reports with me or anything. It's just been horrendous. They are the kryptonite to Guard, and a big part of that is the -1 to hit contagion. Basically, they have two sources of -1 to hit in stratagems. They've got Cloud of Flies and they've got Smoke. And then they can stack that with a contagion, which gives them -1 to enemy weapon skill and ballistic skill. Now, bear in mind that Death Guard, when you mechanize them up, can be surprisingly fast. Bear in mind that they have the ability to extend their contagion range with an enhancement on a with an enhancement. So they have a character, the Lord and Terminator armor, who extends contagion range by 3 inches. So on turn 3, he's got a 12-inch contagion range. That is going to affect a huge amount of units. And also, bear in mind, they have the Hell Brutes. Honestly, what's interesting is whenever I play Death Guard, they don't pick the -1 to hit one, and I always am pretty happy with that. They often pick the extra AP. Now, extra AP, extra damage output is always good, but yeah, they do a lot of damage. But I really feel like the -1 to hit one is better when facing Guard. When facing Death Guard, man, it can be so difficult. When I have beaten them, it is when I have attacked on multiple fronts. So a little bit like what we were saying with Custodes, where they take Wardens and they shove them into your face and they want you to look here, look here, look here, look here. Death Guard often will try and do something similar. And really what you want to try and do with them is kill everything. Try and kill stuff that they don't want you to kill. Another big thing that you want to try and do is kill their heavy hitters at range. So when you kill their vehicles at range and stuff. So if you see an opportunity, it's weird. It's like facing Custodes and like facing Eldar at the same time. Whenever you get the opportunity to carve away a Death Guard unit, you should take it. Whenever you see them like pop a -1 here or -1 there, try and go after something they haven't put their buffs on. Because what you'll tend to find is you'll be hugely inefficient trying to kill the really, really jawable stuff. It's hard though. Like when they take a big unit Death Shroud and throw them into you, it's like, fuck man, like I've got to try and deal with these. So yeah, Death Guard, honestly, I don't have a lot of good advice with dealing with Death Guard. The best advice I can give you is I have attacked on a wide front. I have tried to hit them from multiple angles. And I have tried not to let them tunnel vision me. I have tried to screen them out, and I have found Basilisks have been very good at slowing them down. Whenever I have had Basilisks, I have found Death Guard have been manageable, but I have rarely handily beaten them. I have beaten them many times, but it has never been an easy matchup. So the best thing to know about Death Guard is you go into that fight, it's going to be tough. Be switched on, do not be overconfident, play your heart out, and if you play a solid game, you'll probably win. But if you play a sloppy game, you will definitely lose. World Eaters. Now, how you deal with World Eaters is very, very similar to how you deal with Chaos Demons. They're going to have a number of really horrible units running at you. Angron is going to charge you turn 1. The World Eater player is going to frontline him. The World Eater player is going to try and is probably going to get first turn, Sod's Law, and the World Eater player is going to yeet Angron into your line turn 1. It's going to be a turn 1 charge. Nothing you can do about it. The way you beat World Eaters is you don't try and sort of just hold the line against them. You want to be constantly keeping them off balance. I've done this multiple times, and what's interesting is Simon, Salty Simon, who plays Grey Knights, has done this as well. And what he found was very effective against them, what I found was very effective against them, is they run forward with all their stuff, like they run forward. So then you deep strike into their back lines and you kill all their support units. Because one thing that the World Eaters want to do is make sure they have plenty of influence over their blessings of the Blood God, what used to be called Blood Tithe. They're going to have jackals on objectives. There's going to be like a dude with an enhancement on an objective. What you want to do is basically, once you want to kite them as best as you can, and you want to try and avoid any mano-a-mano fights, any standard fights. They'll just win those. And you want to clear away all the little bits. Just clear away the back line. And as they come running at you this way, you go behind them. And if you do that, what you'll find is you clear away all the Blood Tithe support. And then when you start, then you fucking slap Angron down. Because he's tough, but he's not that hard to kill. He's like a 4 per vulnerable save. Sometimes doesn't feel no pain, sometimes doesn't. But you slap Angron down and then he just doesn't come back. If you slap Angron down first, because he's run into your lines and you slap him down, if you haven't got rid of his support network, he's just going to come back and you've wasted your time. So, kite Angron, because he's going to be in the list. He's in every list. Kill the Blood Tithe shit. When that's down, they're going to be forced to use expensive units to hold objectives, or they're not going to hold objectives, at which point you're going to be winning on primary points. And then kill Angron, and you'll find that they go to sleep. If you try and make Angron go to sleep first, he's just going to wake up again. Necrons! So how do you beat Necrons? The way I beat Hypercrypt is I make death pockets. I make kill zones. Necron Hypercrypt, basically, it's like Grey Knights. They pick units up at the end of your turn, and then they bring them back down. Now, what you want to do is try and create these overlapping fields of fire. You often want to break your army up into like a couple of distinct formations. You know how I've spoken about having like armies within armies before, like mini armies, right? Like almost like platoons, right? So what you'll often do in Necrons is you want to have these like distinct formations, but they're able to like move in and support each other. The big thing is being able to counterattack. So the Necron, what I've seen happen is like you leave a gap because they can deep strike in within 3 inches. So what you do is you make a gap where it's like, okay, you can definitely get within 3 inches there. Maybe they put a Votann in there. Maybe they put like a fucking like a vehicle or something in there. But you leave you leave like 2 or 3 in your back line, 2 or 3 of these kill zones. And the thing is, like if a Votann drops in 3 inches, it can't charge. It can't charge. So it drops in, does a little bit of finger lightning, and then it's like, oh no, what next? And then you turn around and you fuck it, and you make a few of these death. You can make 2 or 3 of these death pockets, and some of them are going to be at the back, some of them are going to be at the front. Can Votann not drop within 3 inches anymore? They used to be able to. Maybe it's been updated. But the point is that you want the thing with Necrons is they're going to try and deep strike in, clear an area, and then they're going to try and at the end of your turn pull things up. So what you can do is bait them out. So put a juicy target out there, maybe like a Chimera, maybe like a Hellhound or something. Put a juicy target so he brings his stuff down, kills that, but then in your turn you move out and you hit him back. That's how you have to do it. So make these little kill boxes where he's going to be able to deep strike in and do some damage. And then whatever he puts into the kill pocket can be slammed from multiple angles. Throw units forward that are juicy enough that he's going to go for it. And then anything he goes for, counter attack and hit. How you beat Hypercrypt is you have to have counter punch. They are relying on you they're relying on sweep and clear. That's when I learned that. That's how I learned to beat Hypercrypt. Because the difference between Hypercrypt and Grey Knights is Grey Knights don't do any damage. They just run around scoring. Necrons, they take units to do damage. They're going to want to use them. Dark Angels. How does Guard beat Dark Angels? Well, what you understand is the Dark Angel player is going to want to do staging We've talked about staging. I've even made a video about staging. Staging is the opposite of screening. Screening is how you set your units up to stop your opponent from fucking you. Staging is how you set your opponents up, how you set your units up to fuck your opponent. A good example of staging is putting a unit behind a ruin where it can't be seen, and the next turn running out and charging someone with it. Okay, so even if you don't use your maximum move the first turn, you move up to the staging point and then you jump out. Dark Angels love staging. Often you'll find in a Dark Angels army, they're going to have a lot of stuff. They're going to have a surprising amount of. You're going to be surprised at how much stuff they bring to the table. There'll be 2 to 3 units of scouts for fucking up infiltrators, getting early objectives. They're going to have 2 or 3 units of the jump pack intercessors, either for doing secondaries or for moving the board quickly. They're probably going to have some fire support, typically the classic Predator with autocannon turret, 2 las cannons. But what you're also going to find that Azrael's going to be there to get them some extra CP. And they might have a little unit of Incestors bodyguarding him, maybe not. And then the big thing though is the Deathwing Knights. The Deathwing Knights are really tough. They reduce damage by 1, and they've got a 4 per vulnerable save, and they've got some other defensive shenanigans that they can pull off. So Deathwing Knights will sometimes they'll start on the board if they do Basilisk Thumb, slow them the foot down. Often what they will do is rapid ingress so that they don't get basilisked. They'll rapid ingress into a staging point and they'll jump out and get you. Dark Angels, it's primarily going to be like a bit of shooting, but really it's a combat army. And the Deathwing Knights are really, really tough. What you want to do against Dark Angels is to try and make their indirect fire is phenomenal against them because it defeats the whole thing they're trying to do, staging. And also they're going to have a go turn. It's probably going to be turn 3 where they've staged everything turn 1 and 2. They're going to have scored what points they can. They're going to try and keep pace on primary and secondary, but they're not going to be big scoring turns turn 1 and turn 2. And then turn 3, they're going to have a go turn, and they're going to go all in, and they're going to push. The reason they're going to do that is because they know they have about 3 turns of durability in them, with like Deathwing Knights and a lot of the just general mass that they're going to be throwing forward. So they know they're going to have about 3 turns of that. Especially, well, if they go second, they're going to be able to handle you fighting back into them twice, because they'll have your turn 4, your turn 5 to push back. Yeah, basically, the thing with the go turn is you have to be ready for it. Now, the way that you might clear them, but it's very unlikely. They're very, very tanky. What I would say is don't necessarily try and take the Deathwing Knights on. If you can do some damage to them, great. But often it's going to be the Deathwing Knights pushing into you, and they're going to have other stuff that's going to go onto the objectives behind it. So what you will find is if you can try to not cede ground, don't fall back in a panic. Keep them on the objectives because you'll typically auto-see them. They're like 1 OC each, or they're Deathwing Knights. So kill any units that you can clear, any OC you can take away from them, and then you can basically just keep denying them the points. Will allow you to basically stop them from just basically push, because they're trying to push onto and then past the objectives. If you can keep the fight onto the objectives, as guard, you'll typically be able to auto-see them. That would be my advice with it. But if you think it's going really well turns 1 and turn 2, be prepared to get fucked turn 3. And the fight doesn't really begin till turn 3. The fight doesn't really begin until the go turn. We've got Sisters of Sister Battle. So I believe every unit in the Sisters army gets assault on all their guns, and on top of that, if they get within 12 inches, it's either +1 strength or +1 to wound. I believe it's +1 strength, but chat can correct me down below. So what to be aware of with sisters. So firstly, like with Renegade Raiders with Chaos, they're going to be much faster than you expect. Like with Tau, they're going to get angles that you don't expect. It's that whole put a unit in a transport. The transport can and then what they'll do is they'll move out 3 inches from the transport. Then they'll move. Then they'll advance. And then they'll get you. Now, the big difference between Sisters and Chaos is typically Chaos is taking assault units and they're yeeting them out at you one at a time to then take advantage of advance and charge because it's an assault unit. A combat unit, I should say. Sisters aren't going to do that. They're just going to move out with everything. They're not going to feed 1 unit a turn. They'll hit you with as many units as they want. They might not throw the whole army in, but they're going to hit you with as many units as they want to because they're not moving and assaulting and then spending a CP for advance and charge. They're just moving and advancing, and then they've all got assault weapons. So they can hit you every which way straight away. So again, it's very reminiscent of like Tau. It's faster than you expect. It's going to get the first punch in. And them going up to strength 10 on their melter guns is a big deal because it means that the vast majority of vehicles and monsters that they're going to encounter, they're now going to wound on 4s, not 5s. And anything that they do need to wound on 5s and 6s, well, here come the miracle dice. Miracle dice, if you've not faced them before, basically over the course of the game, the Sisters of Battle player is going to build up a pool of miracle dice. They get them from all sorts of things. They get them from certain units standing on objectives. They get them from units dying. They get them from like their units getting martyred and stuff. I think they get them from like characters dying and all. I think they might even get them if they kill your units. Maybe they're just gonna farm these miracle dice. Okay, and how they work is each time they get an opportunity to generate a miracle dice, they roll a dice. So okay, one of my units has died. I'll roll a dice. I get a 6. That 6 is now a miracle dice. And when it comes, and I put it in my pool, so I've got so let's say over the course of a couple of turns, they've generated like 8 or 9 miracle dice. Very easy to do. Let's say they've got let's say they've got 9 miracle dice. They've got 3 6s, 1 5, and then the rest of them are like 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Okay. Now what will happen is the Sister Battle player will be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna hit you. Now, before I roll to wound, I need to make sure that I wound this vehicle. So rather than rolling to wound with one of my attacks, typically a melter gun attack, I'm going to take a 6 or a 5 from a miracle dice pool and basically sub that in, put it in. So if you're like, I'm not worried about Sisters. I've got a bunch of like toughness 11 vehicles. They'll be wounding me on like 5s. I can tank it. That's not reliable. Oh my sweet summer child, they are not going to be hitting you on 5. They're going to be auto wounding you in a funny with one attack. Basically, one attack, every unit is going to auto wound you. Or if they're pretty confident they're going to wound you, or they get the wounds through, they can sub it in for a damage dice. So it's like, okay, I'm going, oh man, my tank's a little damaged, but I should be on average, I should be able to, oh no, they've just put a 6 in the miracle dice damage. I am fucked. So yes, miracle dice are very, very strong. Now, Sisters of Battle units, ones you want to look out for, Triumph of St. Catherine. It does a bit of everything. You want to look out for the Paragon Warsuits, like basically Sisters Terminators. They're kind of like Terminators and Gravis. They're big and chunky. The Paragon Warsuits will they do damage. Each one's coming with a multi-melter. Each one's coming with like a spear or a mace. They're gonna move. They're gonna shoot. They're gonna chop. Okay, so Paragon Warsuits led by Morven Vile. You see that combo, be wary of it. Respect it. Okay, respect it. Now, another thing to be aware of is their indirect fire. It's swingy as fuck. Well, unless you use miracle dice, it's pretty swingy, but it's quite punchy. I think their exorcists are like damage 3 or something crazy. So be aware that they might fire like a couple of X's at you, and you're like, huh, that's shit. And then next turn they fire the same X's and they just flatten something. Okay, so that's the thing with like the indirect fire. It can sometimes lull you into a false sense of security. Also be aware of castigators. They get bonuses for I think they get like extra, if they got like the auto cannon, they get extra AP for shooting infantry. If they've got like the battle cannon, they get extra AP for shooting tanks. It might be the other way around. They're like predators, essentially. Now the big thing is what are some good tips for fighting sisters? I mean, I'm only speaking from personal experience here. I have found that a lot of their units aren't that tough to kill. They've got some real doozies. Like, I think the Arco Flagellum is like a Feel No Pain. And everyone is getting an invulnerable save. And they do have access to like 4+ invulnerable saves. On like, I think Seraphim have got like a 4+ invulnerable save. And probably the Paragons have got a 4+ invulnerable save. But fundamentally, they are toughness 3. And fundamentally, a lot, even if they're in cover, they're on like a 3-up save. Sometimes 3-ups can be good. Sometimes you just yeet enough lasgun bolts into them and they fall over. So what I have found is and they're all 1 wound. You don't realize how big a deal it is, like Space Marines having 2 wounds until you face sisters, and you're like, oh shit, man! Like, I just got like 2 wounds through on a 5-man squad and just killed 2 people. I just got like 3 wounds through on a 5-man squad from like lasguns. Just rolled kind of badly, and I've just gutted like a 5-man squad or 5-sister squad. So sisters do a lot of damage. They are not as easy to sweep away. They're not as fragile. They've got power armor at the end of the day, so you gotta respect that. But T3 1 wound means that pure fucking volume. Pure volume. Hold the trigger down, just hose them down, can work. And don't forget, plasma is great against them. And at the end of the day, Guard brings a lot of special weapons. A lot of, like, all your plasma, all your melter, it's not supplementary firepower against sisters. It's actually, it's good. There's a lot of things about sisters that I've not covered. The takeaways are they're very strong. They do a horrendous amount of damage output. They are going to, if they've got a good miracle dice farm going on, they're going to always do the damage that they want to do. But it can be amazing how on one bad, if you just hose them down on one bad turn, they can kind of just disappear. So it's interesting. They're not as cheap as they used to be. In previous editions, sisters used to literally throw waves after waves of you, and if you could survive like the 3 waves, then typically you'd win. It's not like that now. They're a little bit. It's a little bit Eldar reminiscent, where a couple of if you're trading 1 for 1 with them, you can surprisingly, after like 2 or 3 turns of doing that, look around and the battlefield is fairly bereft of sisters because their points went up massively. So also their combat is not. They have some. I mean, they have very specifically good combat units. Like don't be charging Arco Flagellants or Paragon Warsuits. But a unit of 10 guardsmen fighting a unit of 5 sisters battle. I mean, no one's going to win that anytime soon, and your unit is a little bit cheaper than that. Well, I think they come in 10-man squads now, but they can be split into 5s. So you don't want to be necessarily seeking combat, but they want to shoot you. They are more of a shooting army than a combat army. So next we have Thousand Suns. So Thousand Suns meta basically consists of Magnus doing a lot of heavy lifting, and it's about the Cabal points. So Thousand Suns have this game mechanic, like Sisters have got their Miracle Dice. Thousand Suns have got their own unique game mechanic, which is called Cabal points. And essentially, the more characters they have, the more Cabal points that they generate. Now, in theory, the way to beat them is to take away their Cabal points, because the Cabal, those points give them all sorts of buffs from being able to generate ridiculous amounts of mortal wounds, being able to blank damage. They're very strong. The problem that Guard has is typically the things generating the Cabal points. A good Thousand Suns player won't let you go anywhere near it. They won't. They're going to hide that shit. It's going to be like 5-man squads with a character here and all that kind of stuff. So, what you will find in a typical competitive Thousand Suns list is going to be Magnus, a couple of Mutalith Vortex Beasts, a couple of chaff units, and the rest will be small rubric squads with like characters and characters. Now, what you want to do against the what's really good at dealing, what you'll notice about the army is it's not very mechanized at all. So once again, indirect fire is really good. You know, every Basilisk shell that goes through is going to kill a Rubric Marine, so and it will slow them down. So you'll find that Basilisks, Earthshakers, anything that can slow them down is very powerful. It's like facing Death Guard. You can slow them down. It's great. The thing is, what the big one you want to be careful of is Magnus. A bit like Angron, right? Magnus is going to come at you. He can double move. Again, those Cabal points, right? Now, Magnus is a very tough cookie. He reduces damage. He has a 4% vulnerable save. But the one thing he doesn't have is a feel no pain. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I am aware, he can't get a feel no pain. So what really fucks Magnus up is mortal wounds. Okay? So any opportunity you get to throw grenades at Magnus, do it. Okay, not every opportunity, but be aware, have it in your back pocket. Tank shock. Okay? You will struggle to kill Magnus via conventional means. You might damage him a bit. It'll help, but you will, and you still want to try and do a bit of damage to him, but it's going to be mortal wounds. All right? Because he's going to have his 4-up save. I think it's -1 damage or -1 to wound. It could be both. He's going to have a blank from the Cabal point. He's going to have like a re-roll to the 4-up. So he's got a lot of layers where basically, if you hit him with like a lot of las cannons and stuff, he's going to be fine. And he's got a 2-up followed by a 4-up, so trying to grind him down can be tough. But like I said, just if you can yeet enough regular conventional stuff into him to chip away at him, and then just keep lobbing grenades at him, you will. That'll get him down. I think Creed is surprisingly good against him, because Creed can throw. If you have got Creed, your one unit can throw. Correct if I'm wrong here again. I think you can throw 2 grenades with Creed, because she lets you do 1 more stratagem for once. Is it just a CP less? No, it's not double grenade anymore, is it? I'm getting my balance patches mixed up. She doesn't let you do another stratagem for free anymore. She lets you do a stratagem for 1 CP less. That's it. So 3 grenades from Creed, but not double grenades. So yeah, throw grenades, more wounds. That's how you deal with Magnus. Clear away, a bit like when facing demons. Clear away the chaff units, because they're going to try and use those for objectives. And one other thing to be aware of: Mutalith Vortex Beasts are really annoyingly tough. They've got like a 4 invulnerable save and a 5-up feel no pain, and that combination, yeah. And they've got like a lot of wounds, like 14 wounds, and they're like toughness 11 or 12 or something. So be aware that Mutalith Vortex Beasts are hard. They're hard to kill. Their damage output is okay. They've got like 1 big fucking attack, like shooting attack, or like a flamer, and then combat it's kind of like similar. They can like do a big attack or lots of little attacks, but it's the tankiness is what they're really bringing to the table. But you might be surprised when they do one of those big punches and it goes through, but it's like 1 attack. To beat Thousand Suns, like I said, don't forget your mortal wounds against Magnus. Clear away the little chaff units they want to try and do objectives with. Slow them down, and just constantly be grinding away and doing damage to them. And you will eventually be able to get the victory against them. It's not going to be a big punch either way. It's probably going to be them hiding a lot of stuff and fucking with you with Magnus and the Mutaliths. That's really what they're probably going to do. They're probably going to have like a go turn as well. Grey Knight. How do you beat Grey Knights? It's actually pretty simple. Did you bring indirect fire? No, you lost. That's it, you lost. Did you bring indirect fire? Yeah, you probably won. It's that simple. Grey Knight players are going to hide. They're going to keep hiding, and they're going to just get whatever points they can get, and they're going to hide behind objectives, and they're going to score points. Anytime you try and shoot them, they're going to teleport away, and they're going to be going up and down. If you have indirect fire, they can't do any of that shit, and it forces them to come out and fight. And if they're forced to come out and fight, then they die, because they don't do any fucking damage. It's that simple. So the way you beat Grey Knights is, remember, you put double Basilisk in every single one of your armies, and you force the Grey Knight player to come out to play. It's that. Double Basilisk and a unit, maybe even triple Basilisk, if you know you're facing Grey Knights. But yeah, bring your indirect fire, force them to come out. It's that simple. Blood Angels! Let's talk about how we beat Blood Angels. Screening. Blood Angels are the fast-moving assault pressure army. They're like Dark Angels as well. They're going to stage and then they're going to hit you. Typically, Blood Angels players have 3 to 4 bricks of hyper-lethal infantry, which they will stage up and then throw into you. They also have a few small units for doing like objectives and stuff. As always, if you can kill the small units for doing objectives, it can put the Blood Angel player in a bit of a tricky position. One thing to bear in mind is if they're running a lot of Death Company, kill the chaplains. Wherever they may be, kill the chaplains, because the Death Company will become 0C. And that actually is a big deal. What Blood Angels really don't like, now, more than ever, what Blood Angels really don't like is mech. Because they used to have every guy with an Inferno pistol. And so what they do is they jump out, they stage, jump out, melt to your transport, and then kill the guys inside. Now they get like 2, 3 Inferno pistols max per army, max per squad, which is not even enough to kill a Chimera. You either get max damage from that squad, it's not enough to kill a Chimera. So the way you beat Blood Angels is Mech Guard, because they're going to come flying in, they're going to batter a Chimera, batter your Chimeras, and then you're going to jump out, and then you're going to hit them back. One thing to mention, though, is the one thing that really fucks Blood Angels up is a brick wall. 2 up save vehicles, like Sentinels and Hellhounds, or Kryptonites, Blood Angels. Some of their units will carve through it, you know, Sanguinary Guard. They're not. You're not gonna slow them down. But the big weakness of the army is it caps out at AP -2 basically, and it caps out at damage 2 basically as well. Damage to Thunderhammers, damage to Power Fists, damage to Eviscerators. I even think the Sanguinary Guard weapons are damage 2. Some maybe damage 3, but damage 2. AP -2. Big unit of armor sentinels. 27 wounds there. 24 wounds there. 24 wounds there. An annoying amount they've got to try and get through. So if one thing that does well in it does well into Blood Angels, like I said, Mech Guard, but having a hyper drawable like wall where basically like I've just got Hellhounds which are happy to stay in combat and burn you. So yeah, screening. Traditional screening is fine, but the brick wall can really slow them down, because slowing them down is big. They're going to be like go 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 go. They're going to try and put you in what do we call it? They're going to try and put you in Arkham. So this is the thing that me and Simon came up with on the when we did the battle report. You've got Wolf Jail. You've had like Kroot Jail and stuff. Death Company Jail. Blood Angel Jail, Death Company, DC, so Arkham Asylum. I thought it was quite good. Anyway, they're going to put you in Arkham, and every turn that you can slow them down is going to rob them of momentum. So next we have the Guard. Now, how do you beat Guard? Now, what's interesting is I actually thought about doing a separate video, like a classic Mordian Glory, sort of know thy foe kind of video about this. The way I have lost games with Guard is when I've been kept off primary. That sounds obvious, but there is a number of ways that that can be done. You have factions like Custodes, which we have talked about extensively tonight. They pin you in, and you just can't get the breathing room, and they basically just keep you busy until, if you can clear them, by the time you have done, they've got all the points. So guard armies are at risk, somewhat at risk of being jailed, but it's funny. Sometimes the best thing you can do against a guard army is bum rush it down and put it in jail. Sometimes it's the worst thing you can do. I've had many a Tyranid and Orc player try and do that, and I've just blown them off the table in 2 turns. And then I've had many a Custodes player do it to me, and I've been crying in a corner because I just can't grind through the 4-ups. So it's not a set thing. So for some fact, but when you are a guard player taking on other guard, what's the key? I have done a lot of guard versus guard match. So I'm not going to go through anything in any specific order. I'm just going to reflect back on what did I do. If they had a Lord Solar, first thing I did is hit that Lord Solar blob with all my artillery until it died. So I guess the first advantage you want to try and gain is to gain the order advantage. Typically tank order advantage. You're going to struggle to gain the infantry order advantage because infantry orders are going to be from like characters embedded in big squads, or they're going to be units like Kazakh which can order themselves. The first thing you want to try and do is get, if they have a Lord Solar blob, is to break that blob, or they've got a lone Lord Solar which they're trying to be clever with, break that model, and getting the order advantage is big. That will give you the order advantage, will give you the mobility advantage because they won't be able to move as much, and it will give you the firepower advantage. They won't be able to get plus, won't be able to take aim as much. That's the first thing. Second advantage you want to try and gain is the objective control advantage. Typically guard armies are quite OC dense. So when 2 guard armies go into each other, they're both going to be quite OC dense. So focusing down the units that they want to push onto the primary is often a great way of essentially being able to deny them primary points. So yeah, so break up the Lord Solar if they've got one. Try and gain OC superiority. Third one. If the third sort of area you want to try and focus on, you don't worry too much. So one thing you don't want to worry about too much is getting an advantage like anti-infantry. Guard has so much spare anti-infantry firepower with every vehicle having like a heavy stubber and all the lads guns and lads gun arrays and everything. So don't worry, don't focus on anti-infantry. And weirdly, no, actually, I'm gonna take that back. I'm gonna take that back. Completely take that back. You want to gain the OC advantage. Want to gain the OC advantage. So weirdly, what you might find is if you get into a tank duel. So let's say you've got 5 tanks, they've got 5 tanks. If it can be very, very often the right move to lose the tank duel, but to win the infantry duel. So if you see a situation where you can put your battle cannon into an enemy tank, or you can put your battle cannon into a blob of enemy infantry, even though it might result in the enemy getting the first shot, and therefore they might end up over a couple of turns of shooting, kill your Lehman Russ, you are better off putting that firepower onto the infantry. I have lost tank duels in many guard v guard matchups, but because they were so focused on doing damage to my damage dealers, and I used pretty much all my damage dealers to go after their their infantry, what essentially happened is it turned the game weirdly into infantry guard versus tank guard, and infantry guard beats tank guard because tank guard can't out objective control. That's always been the weakness of Armored Company, hasn't it? The weakness has been you've got great firepower, but you don't have any way of playing the objective. So that's my advice for fighting. Two number one things for fighting in guard on guard matchup. Use your indirect fire. If they've got a Lord Solar, which they nearly always do, use your indirect fire to disable that blob or kill that guy. And then focus on winning the OC war. That's how you do it. If you can take out, if they don't have a Lord Solar, they've got like tank commanders and stuff, take out the fucking tank commanders, man. And again, yeah, orders, basically cut the head off the snake. Cut the head off the snake, kill the infantry corps, and it'll basically, the tanks won't be able to pick up the slack. That is how an RBMK reactor explodes. My Beyblades bring all the guard to the yard, and damn right, they're better than yours, damn right, they're better than yours. GSC, they've got a very low player count. So GSC meta, it's you're just not going to play them. They're basically a dead faction. Not on the competitive scene. Loads and loads and loads and loads of people have GSC as a third army or fourth army. That's not always a second army, but they're very rarely a first army. But most people have GSC as a second or third army. So when they're good, they just get them off the shelf and use them. And when they're bad, they just sit on them for a bit and build them up in the background like a fun hobby project. And that's the same, that's right now. Regarding how to beat GSC, in a funny sort of way, it's not really up to you. Do they roll 5+ as well to bring their units back? If they do, they will have a good chance of winning. If they do, they might have a chance of winning. If they don't, they won't win. Because they basically paid to get units back, but they're not got units back. How do you beat Genestealer Cult? If you do come across them, be aware that sometimes, be aware they'll drop demo charges on your head, and their Genestealers are really fast. Like they move in advance and charge, but you will just flatten them in a war of attrition because they're very elite, and if their stuff doesn't come back, they're dead. And even if their stuff does come back, they have to place it in a relatively safe place, or you're gonna kill it before it even comes back on the table. Indirect fire definitely does help against them, Matthew Umlet, you're right. But Guard does not struggle with GSC. Mech Guard with heavy flamer catachans in the back of 6 chimeras. That's the thing. You don't need to take GSC into account to be able to beat them. I've played them a couple of times this edition, and both times I've beaten them, I've literally just had a normal mech army. I've just had like 2 basilisks, 5 chimeras, 6 chimeras, 5 tanks. That's it. And I've not taken anything special to beat them. I've just had half decent Overwatch and a lot of armor, and they can't do diddly dick against it. But yeah, Guard, GSC might get some units back and might be able to match on numbers, or they don't get the units back, and in which case we outnumber them, and yet they have the same stat lines as us. So obviously we win that one. Drukhari! The way you beat Dark Eldar is you kill the boats. And it's very easy to do. Like, your lasguns are wounding venoms on 5s, guys, okay? Like, you don't even need the lethal hits. So kill the boats, and you will find that their infantry hits hard. Real hard. And their firepower hits hard. And they can use pain tokens to get, like, 4 rerolls in various places. Okay, like, they hit hard, and they are fast. But they are so easy to kill. I mean, I'm talking like, I played them a couple of times at one tournament, and my heavy stubbers were racking up kills. Like, just my opponents at the end, man, those heavy stubbers were hard, and I was like, I didn't even fucking think about it. I didn't even fucking pay for them, you know? So Yes, they have -1 to hit as well with lightning fast reflexes. But really, I mean, they're just so fragile. So kill the boats, and you will find that it is relatively easy to pick up the stuff that's out of the boats. Obviously, flamers are amazing against these guys because they want to jump out and then like charge you. So you just like flame. I ran 3 Hellhounds into Dark Eldar, and it felt, even without Hellhounds though, Chimeras with Catachans inside. Not for Overwatch, of course, because you can't Overwatch from the firing deck. But the Chimeras, if they've got flamers, can be good. And you can drive forward and basically flame them. Guard, I don't feel like Guard overly struggle with Dark Eldar. It's not... You can afford to be kind of ballsy. Even though you know you're going to take a big hit. You can afford to be kind of ballsy because you're going to outnumber them tank for tank, and you're going to outnumber them infantry for infantry. Don't be reckless, but don't be afraid to get hit by them, because you'll probably unless that, like I said, you need to get rid of the boats. Get rid of the boats, then they're going to come boiling out at you, then they're going to hit you hard, then you're going to flatten them. Yeah. Azuth has some good points here. They have 2 big weaknesses. Good Overwatch that punches their glass cannon infantry when they get out, or fast AT which can chase down the transports. Neither of those is rare in this meta. Certain armies don't have either, but every tournament has some armies that have one or both. Yeah. Yeah, I found Recon Guard. So when I ran my Recon Guard, which was all like Sentinels and Hellhounds and Chimeras, I found that I was out Dark Eldering the Dark Eldar, because I was just as fast as them with all my scout moves, and yet I was more and my firepower was just as noticeable as theirs, and yet my durability was way higher. It's like, oh, I've got a Venom, it's T5. Oh, I've got a Taurox. My Taurox isn't that was it. I've got Venoms. Oh, yeah, they're pretty fast. So how fast do they move? Like 14, 16 inches? Yeah. How far does your transport? Yeah, well, it moves like 12 inches. It's got like a 6-inch scout. Oh, so pretty similar, yeah. What's yours armed with? Like Venom cannons. It's like not got any guns. Okay, what's yours? Or cannon? Yeah, not many guns. How many wounds does yours have? 5, toughness 5. It's like 6, toughness 5. It's like, oh. And I thought my Taurox were fragile. And they're like, oh, how tough is a Taurox? T8 with 10 wounds and a 3-up save. And you can see the Dark Eldar players like, I'd fucking wish I had Tauroxes. Like literally, Dark Eldar are like the only faction out there that are looking at Guard Tauroxes with fucking jealous eyes, man. Yeah, because they're fast and they're tough, and they can move and jump out, move, advance, and jump out. Yeah. So yeah. So they're you just beat them. Scout moves are really good against them. Scout moving transports, because it allows you to get angles which the Dark Eldar don't want you to get. Because even, like I said, even if you get an angle with a Chimera and you can see a Venom, there's a chance that you might kill the Venom. As crazy as it sounds, you only need to get like 6 wounds through on it, and heavy bottles of damage to each, and you've got lethal hits. Yeah, you might be hitting on fucking 5s, but yeah. So they will probably take, but they know this, so they'll probably take some Mandrakes. Mandrakes can infiltrate, and if they're still alive, they can go back in the sky. But then what you do is you just scout move as far forward as you're allowed, and then just move, get out, and just kill the Mandrakes. And it's like, yeah, I'm happy with that trade either way, man. Because like Eldar, they only have so many assets. So ABC, always be carving away assets. Last but not least, we have got the Space Wolves. So they've got a 56% win rate, and they've got against an average of 54%. So it's very, very, very strong. And Champions of Ross had a great week this week with a 65% win rate, with 2 out of 6 players going 4-1. And Stormlands continues to be a solid choice with a 57% win rate against an average of 56% win rate, with 3 people going 4-1 out of 9 players. So the vast majority of people are going to be in either Champions of Rust or Stormlands Task Force. Now, I have to admit, I've not played against Champions of Rust yet, so I'm not entirely certain on advice on how to beat that. But Stormlands, I am aware of. Stormlands equals Wolf Jail. They are going, and it's still, as you can see, it's still very popular. Stormlands is the entire army has advanced and charge. So what they do is they take as many Thunderwolf cavalry as possible, and then they try and put you in what's called Wolf Jail, where they yeet them all as far forward as possible. And they have like a surge move on like one of these wolf units. And so they're going to try and basically box you in. And even if you manage to clear away the Wolf Jail, it takes you so long that by the time you've done it, the enemy's racked up so many primary points, you've lost the game anyway. So, and often, because everyone in that, on those wolf units, on those Thunderwolf cavalry units, has got a 4% vulnerable save, it can sometimes be like facing fast Custodians, which is a terrifying prospect. The way you beat Wolf Jail is twofold. One, you have sufficient screening so that you can just blast them off the table, because at the end of the day, they're like 4 wounds each with a 4 vulnerable save. Like, they're tough, but you can flatten them fairly consistently. The other way you beat them is, it's like playing World Eaters. They're going to come at you with a lot of stuff, and they're not going to have much in their back line to screen at all. I've played against Wolf Jail in a very competitive environment twice, and I've beaten them twice. And the reason I have beaten them is because I remembered to put stuff in strategic reserve. Or I had things that naturally went to reserve, like Scions. Because, like I said, they're going to come at you one way. So you have a whole bunch of guys that basically sort of hold the line. Then you have a whole bunch of guys that come in either from the flanks or deep strike down, and basically you sandwich them. It's the pincer maneuver, and that can sweep away their back line very easily. So now they've got to decide: do I come back and hold my home objective, or do I leave it? At which point they could be on the you're racking up points from their back objective, and then they're not getting the primary points from it. So it kind of forces them into a bit of a base trade at that point, because you're going to hold 2 theirs and your home objective. So you only have to hold 1 in no man's land, which is relatively easy to do, just like force concentrate onto 1 objective there. So yeah, that's you let them run forward, because they're going to do that turn 1, turn 2, down the back. If they push forward, then they basically sacrifice the back line, which is a big gamble. If they come back, you've bought yourself time, which means they can't wolf jail you. All righty ho, and that just about. Long story short, the meta is settling somewhat. We're seeing the same factions each week do well. We're seeing the same factions by and large each week do badly. And so, as crazy as it sounds, because of how much change we've had, we could probably do with the balanced data slate. If you're watching this post live, or you want to leave a comment, if you're here now, you want to leave a comment after the video does go down, let me know what you think, and let me know what you'd like to see. But gentlemen, thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you all for joining, and of course, as always, see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, Today is a lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.